Boundaries are like bubbles. Sometimes they are so delicate and fragile, and we become more defensive than we are present. I'm Jennifer Evans with Empowering Wellness Counseling Solution, a licensed mental health counselor here to help clients and help you better understand to live a happier and healthier life. Boundaries are bubbles, and psychology will tell you to kind of place the things that serve you inside a bubble and the things that don't serve you outside of a bubble. There's a lot of good and a lot of negative around this, so let's dive in and find out more. The bubble theory for boundaries is kind of like having a hula hoop around you, a big circle that you are in the center of. And the problem with that is that bubble can be incredibly fragile. It can be easily popped. It can make you really defensive. And so instead of people coming into your bubble and occupying your space, what we want to do is create a bubble and a space outside of your bubble, outside of somebody else's bubble, that you can mindfully and intentionally come into together. The bubble theory really allows us to create and hone a special space for ourselves and the relationships that we want to curate. It gives us a meaningful and mindful, intentional way to interact with each other. Many times my clients will say, if I set boundaries, then someone's going to be mad at me, or I don't want people to be mad at me, or they're going to think that I'm selfish. The reality is that when we talk about negotiating value, what we're doing is understanding that setting a boundary means that you're actually really invested in the relationship. You're wanting to validate, pivot, and set a boundary statement. Statements are not harsh, all or nothing ultimatums. They're more like, hey, I know it can be really difficult to be present. I feel like I'm being ignored and not seen and heard when you don't answer my calls. I'm wondering if we can set a time together so that we can just check in with each other and see how our days are. Many times people will avoid over 50 clinical terms to get out of kind of these perceived expectations, that fear of success, fear of failure, self-sabotage, and scarcity mindset. These things that we do that trauma holds us back from, these perceived expectations that things are going to be a lot more complicated and seen and taken a lot worse than they really are. And we ended up becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy. The worst things and the things that we're the most anxious about is what will happen when we stay in that negative dynamic. And so when we can be honest, validate without agreeing, pivot using an I feel statement, and then setting a boundary, what we're doing is creating a space in between us for both of us to interact with. And this is truly the best way to curate a healthy, loving, connected relationship. And so when we look at the shared space for interactions with others, what you want to do is take a moment to take a deep breath and take that time to really think about zoom in, zoom out, find a focal point, empowerment, intention, right? So take that time to say what serves me, what doesn't serve me, what do I want to bring to this relationship, and what do I want to let go of before I interact in this relationship. And as you do that, remember that relationships are a Venn diagram. So as you neutralize your cycle, you're neutralizing the relationship by going into this safe space, into this room, being very mindful of what you're bringing to it. And you're forcing the person you're interacting with, whether this is a partner, a friend, a family member, a coworker, a boss, you're forcing them to now interact with their emotions and contend with their own emotions. because what we do is we project and then we respond. And as that person responds to the negative emotion, they no longer have to take responsibility for their emotions. So now that we are neutral, they have to figure out their own emotions because they're the only ones having emotions. That's the importance of this safe space and creating a space to interact and to really envelop and support a healthy interaction between two people.
Let's take a moment to breathe and imagine something together. Close your eyes if you're comfortable and inhale slowly. Exhale gently. Now picture yourself surrounded by a gentle, glowing bubble, your boundary bubble. This bubble is soft yet strong, permeable but protective. It defines the space of you, your energy, your emotions, your thoughts, your values. Everything inside this bubble is yours to manage and take care of. Now imagine someone else approaching you. Maybe it's someone you care about, or someone you find difficult, or maybe someone who's hurting. They are in their own bubble. Their bubble contains their energy, their pain, their beliefs, their past. You are allowed to care for them. You can hold space for what they're feeling without absorbing it, without fixing it, and without letting their chaos leak into your bubble. This is the key. Holding space is not the same as merging space. You don't have to open your bubble and let their pain flood in. You don't have to take on their emotions or solve their problems to be compassionate. You are not responsible for their bubble. Instead, imagine placing your hands gently on the outside of their bubble. You're present, you're grounded, you're saying, I see you, I'm here with you, but I'm still in my space, and you're in yours. This practice of energetic separation allows us to stay whole, grounded, and emotionally regulated. It prevents us from carrying what isn't ours, from becoming enmeshed, overwhelmed, or burned out. It reminds us boundaries are not walls, they're agreements, they're containers for safety. You can love deeply and still have boundaries. You can be empathetic and still say, that's not mine to carry. So as you go through your day, come back to this bubble. Ask yourself, is this mine or am I carrying someone else's load? Am I holding space or losing myself in someone else's emotions? What does my bubble need right now to feel safe and whole? Let your boundary bubble be your space that is sacred. It protects your peace, your clarity, and your energy. You don't have to let anyone else live inside it, and you don't have to shrink it to make others comfortable. Your space is worthy, and so are you. Breathe in and out. Let's come back to the room, bringing with us the awareness of what belongs to us and what doesn't.
Looking at bubbles, we can see that, there's different types of bubbles. Bubbles can pop. We can be very defensive because bubbles are very fragile. Bubbles can kind of float away, and that attachment, 25% of our negative dynamic comes up. So looking at bubbles popping, when there's too much pressure, too much inside a bubble, it can't sustain it anymore. And so what happens is it pops, and then what happens? We have no boundaries, right? So I look at boundaries like a slippery, rocky edge, and these slippery rocks are right on a cliffside. And so we implicitly will minimize ourselves before we ever explicitly break boundaries. And that happens with little things. We think about that in grooming, but we don't think about it in our own lives and how we're kind of grooming ourselves. But little things like, oh, it wasn't that big of a deal. I didn't really want to do that in the first place. Kind of minimizing, oh, I really hope somebody liked my shirt. I hope it's a good color and it brings my eyes out. It's minimizing because we're looking for external validation, which means we're implicitly minimizing our internal value. When we avoid, we are saying that we have lack of capacity, lack of value, implicitly and explicitly, and therefore low motivation to do better. Those are all little minimizers. And so all of these things kind of gather up and will pop our bubbles to where we have no boundaries anymore. The defensive is that we treat our bubble like it is a fortress raw, the ramparts of our being. And so we see our bubble as ramparts, really that this is going to be our fortress and protect us. And so we stay very, very protected in the very center of the bubble, which causes its own ramifications and our own availability or inavailability to be present with people and being able to interact with them. And people feel that distance. Remember that trust feedback loop. It starts to create other people creating distance with you. That you understand what kind of bubble you have and how you can protect it and support that homeostasis. And as we have these bubbles and we start to curate it together, we start to realize what are the things that are our strengths, what are our barriers, what are we bringing to the table, what are the things we need to mindfully start to create shadows or let go of. And as we do that, we start to realize kind of what our value is, what our good enough self is, and we let go of some of that defensive and protectiveness that gets so muddled in that negative dynamic. And we're able to ground, be present, and intentional as we come and interact with others. And again, getting into that sacred space of shared being as you interact and really curate a positive relationship. And if this is something that you want to learn more about, then click the link below, schedule a free initial consult, go to my website, empoweringwellnesscounselingsolutions.com, and learn more. And I would love for you to subscribe to my Substack and get weekly updates on different topics for growth, living a happier, healthier, more purpose-driven life.